Welcome to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. Build Your Best Business focuses on the entrepreneurial journey. What does it take to successfully start, manage, grow, and eventually exit a business? I'm talking to Steve Preda today. He is an Entrep Coach, or he's with Entrep Coach. That's the name of his company. And he's definitely in that category of making sure that you grow your business. So Steve, thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, Eric, nice to be here. And thanks for the introduction.
Yeah.
And thanks also not to call me an intrepid coach, which I was called by one of the cold callers recently.
That's funny. So you do a lot of things. You're a Vistage chair, right? So you work in Vistage. You also do some EOS work and all kinds of things. Like, tell me how do you explain what you do in Entrep Coach?
Right. So essentially, my main expertise is to help companies scale into a sellable business.
Got it.
So that's what I'm good at. In my previous life, I ran an investment banking boutique in Central Eastern Europe for 12 years. And then I transitioned when we moved over here. I transitioned into Vistage work, which is essentially working with CEOs and groups of CEOs and help them brainstorm issues and educate themselves. And I also, a couple of years ago, I started coaching businesses and leadership teams on how to take their business to the next level. And I teach them a process called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS for short.
Got it. Okay. So interesting. You've got that. You're definitely in that space of moving companies, what I consider entrepreneurially run, to professionally managed. So it's the one person shop where they know how to do everything, and all of a sudden they need to scale or grow. You got to bring a team in. You got to make sure that team's aligned. That you're going to put it at a point that, because it's hard to sell a business where the business is all about just the owner, right? Like there's nothing else behind it.
Well, yes. I mean, entrepreneurs cannot sell themselves.
Uh-huh.
So they often make the mistake that they think that just because they can run this business profitably, they can sell that business. But in fact, if they are the ones who run the business, it's going to be very hard to sell the business, because the buyer will be skeptical that if they pay the owner, they will have the motivation to hang around and to really create and grow the business. Essentially, buyers don't want to buy the past, they want to buy the future. So they have to be comfortable that when they come in, they are going to buy a system, a business that has the potential to grow and to be even more successful than it was in the past.
And I've done a lot of interviews, and that's the first time that somebody said that the buyer wants to buy the future and not the past. And you hear, like, if you watch Shark Tank or you talk to an owner, or even if you think of like a house analogy, people always want to talk about the past. You're like, oh, we did all this stuff, or I spent all this money on this thing, but the buyer is interested in what's going to happen next. Like they want to know about the future. They really could care less about those pieces.
So the tricky thing is that they are buying the future, but they want to pay for the past.
Right.
So they don't want to pay more than what the business has proven itself to be able to deliver. But they also want to feel comfortable that the business has the potential to do more than in the past.
Right.
So the basic approach of investors, generally most investors, is that they don't want to pay more than what the past has proven. And then if there's a competitive situation, they are forced to pay more. And then they have to give up some of the future potential to the seller in order to get that opportunity to be the buyer of the business, especially in today's day and age when it is more of a seller's market in the private business M&A market than the buyers.
Okay, interesting. So I imagine your background in investment banking has been very helpful to your work today, because you have a perspective on kind of what people care about.
So it is true. It has been helpful because I understand what buyers are looking for. So I know what the business has to look like in order to be valuable in the eye of the investors. And I also worked with close to 200 entrepreneurs, helping them to improve their business so that it became sellable. On the other hand, as an investment banker, my work was very much transactions driven. Obviously relationship driven and transaction driven. And now my work is much more focused on improving the business.
Got it.
helping it grow, not focusing so much on transactions, because I don't really care ultimately if someone wants to sell their business. What I want to make sure is that they have options at the end of the day. So they use their business, they build equity, they create a business that they can retire from if something happens to them, to their health, or their priorities shift, or they have to be somewhere else. And then they have the ability, the flexibility to move out of the business without harming the business. And that's what I'm interested in. And it also allows the business to be a no limit business, because essentially every business is limited by its leader.
Mm-hmm.
And if the founder is the only leader who can potentially run the business, then the business is limited by the abilities of the founder. And most founders have an entrepreneurial life cycle. There's a book about this, actually. It's approximately 15 years. So they ride that wave. In 15 years, they accomplish their initial vision. And most of them are not able to take another run at another big vision. They are already satisfied, they are fulfilled, or they're burnt out, or they just not that young anymore, and they don't make this other 15-year run. Very few can. I mean, look at Bill Gates. He built the biggest market company in the world, and now he runs the biggest foundation in the world. So some can, but most cannot. So when that happens, then you really want to have an independent management team to come in who can grow the business. They will have their own vision. They will be full of excitement. They will be full of energy, and they can infuse it into the company. The company then grow to the next level. And maybe in 5-7 years, maybe the company will be sold to another investor, and then there will be another management team with new ideas, and they can keep growing the business to the higher and higher levels.
Yeah, natural life cycles. Yeah.
It's the natural life cycle. So what I want to enable these companies to become institutionalized, to go from a lifestyle business to an institutionalized business, yet through that no man's land of going from a profitable lifestyle business into a less profitable business that is trying to build an independent leadership team to then go into a scalable business.
Yeah, and I give a presentation called the awkward in-between years. So it's like it's a teenager, so it goes from, and entrepreneurs typically love the little kid, like, oh, we've got a startup and I've got control over it and whatever. And then it gets into the awkward in between years and it's just like a teenager. You don't have as much control over it. It costs you money,
exactly.
And a lot of companies get stuck there. Like they get stuck in that kind of teenager gangly period, and they never send it to college. Like it lives in the basement forever. Yeah.
That's right. Or they retreat. So sometimes they decide that they are not going to cross this chasm, and then they're going to retreat to be a small lifestyle company because this is where they're comfortable, and they know they can make more money. They go under the radar, and they stay in a small niche, and they can be profitable. They can make a good living to the owner, but then they deprive the company from the ability to grow. And when a company doesn't grow, it is not able to attract the right talent, because talented people want to be in a situation where when they have no limits, where they can grow as much as their talents allow them. And they're not going to go into a small family business where, the owner will stay there forever. Yeah. There's no point.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So talk to me about, for people that don't know what Vistage is. So what is Vistage, and why would an owner decide to join a group like Vistage?
So Vistage is a kind of a mastermind group. I would go, so for those of you who are familiar with the term mastermind, it's the idea that when you're a business owner, a business leader, then sometimes you feel really alone. Because you have issues that you cannot discuss with your employees, because sometimes it's the employees that are the issue.
Right.
Your spouse may not want to hear about your problems, or may not be able to relate to your problems at work, and you really feel alone with your things, and you have to make some tough decisions that no one can share in the pain of making a decision with you. Sometimes. It's a difficult place to be. So when you are such a business owner, then you want to belong to a kind of peer group, kind of support group, where other like-minded business owners will come together. They will help you with these decisions. They will help you solve issues, challenges without any other agenda, because typically they have nothing to do with your business. So they are only there to support you, to share their experience, to brainstorm about your challenge. And also it's a good forum for these business leaders to get together and educate themselves in a structured way. So in Vistage, we have speakers that come to the group. We have 12 meetings a year. 8 times we have a workshop by an expert who may tell us about building a good culture, marketing, like you were talking to the group, Eric, a couple of weeks ago, which was really well received about your marketing expertise and how to make sense of the social media landscape. That was very helpful to my members and myself, frankly. So Vistage members love the opportunity to have this workshop where they can really get involved with a subject matter expert, and they can suck their brain dry and learn some stuff that they can implement in their businesses. So it's the reason I was attracted to Vistage was twofold. One, I wanted to really be part of myself of a mastermind group of leading entrepreneurs in Richmond, where I live now.
Right.
And secondly, the education part. It's great to be part of a group and see all these speakers, and I pick up a lot of ideas for my businesses. So that's awesome. And it's also a great way to help other business owners to grow and to be more successful.
Yeah, and I love having been part of Vistage. It is that kind of secret club. Like, it's the place you could go and have the conversation, and you have somebody you can talk to, and they hold you accountable. So that's the other part of it. It's not just like you get to go and say, this terrible thing's going on. The next time you go to that meeting, your group's going to be like, hey, we gave you some advice. What did you do? Right? So you don't get away with it.
That's a big deal, because business owners are holding themselves accountable, and we are prone to not be accountable unless we really have to. And especially when a business is doing well, that there's no pressure, it's really easy to kick back and kind of ride the good waves for a while. But if we do that, then eventually our business is going to get in trouble.
Yeah, so or ignoring. Sometimes like to ignore the problem, right? Like
or ignore the problem and try to pretend it doesn't exist, and then your Vistage members will give you the kick in the butt and make sure that you face up to your challenges that you would have to anyway.
Yeah, very cool. Well, we're going to go to a commercial break, and when we get back, I want to talk a little bit about, I'm going to transition over and talk a little bit about EOS and like the entrepreneurial operating system and what that is, how you implement it, why it's important, and kind of how it does help companies move from that entrepreneurially run to professionally managed, so that, hey, maybe the entrepreneur can go on vacation or sell the business or, take a day off, something like that. So anyway, you're listening to Build Your Best Business. I'm talking to Steve Preda. He is with Entrep Coach. That is the name of his company. And we'll be back in just a minute.
Eric, tell us about Laddering Works.
So Laddering Works is a company that helps other businesses in one of two ways.
Okay.
So your company is either growing and you're not exactly sure how to keep up. So you need to scale operations, maybe raise some money, those kind of things.
So growing too fast.
Growing too fast. Okay. Growing too fast. You got kind of structural, you walk in every day, there's a fire. You've been doing it longer than 3 years or 1,000 days, and you still feel like you can't step away from the business and take a vacation. So we help companies on that side. So sort of operational support, looking at their financing, seeing if there's a way that we can help them, get to the next level. Or you're a company that's not doing any marketing at all. So you are maybe stalled. Your business has gotten to a certain level. You make a certain amount of money every year, but you've never gotten above that. And we come in and build marketing structure. So both of them are operational at the end of the day. It's about creating a process and a way to approach it that's strategic. It's that owners don't often know how to do both of those. So they're really good at sales, which means they may need operational structure because they're out signing more customers than they know what to do with. Or they've built a beautiful product that's the best kept secret. And so they need somebody to come in and help them market that product. And so that's the kind of businesses we look for. We come in as a stopgap, and we work with a company for somewhere around 12 to 18 months typically, solve those problems for them and leave them better than we found them. And we're back. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. We're talking today with Steve Preda. He's with Entrep Coach. He does several things. He's kind of in the same space that I am in some ways. I do work with companies from a marketing and sometimes operational perspective to help them get out of that, like, hey, the entrepreneur has to show up every day, or how are we going to scale it? And you gave us some great advice. We were talking in the last segment about things to get in people's way, Steve, like, why they don't get to that next level and why it's important to do so, because that's really getting that value in the business. One of the things that you talked about was the entrepreneurial operating system, which some people call EOS. So tell us a little bit more about what EOS is and why it's important, how you apply it, where you see businesses using it successfully.
Okay, well, so EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, is essentially, it's a process that helps entrepreneurial private companies become a professionally run company. And it's a very simple process. The person who created it, his name is Gino Wickman. He grew up in a family business, and he helped his father, who was a visionary, to turn his business into a scalable business. They scaled it together. They sold it in a few years, and then he was part of a mastermind group like Vistage for several years. And then he had all those speakers come to the group, like Jim Collins and Vern Harnish and Michael Gerber and all these people that wrote the iconic business books of the last 25, 30 years. And he really liked these ideas, but what he recognized was that these ideas were not practical enough. So it was too theoretical, and it was not easy to implement them in your business. So for example, Jim Collins says that you have to have the right people on the bus and put them in the right seat. That sounds great, but how do you actually do that?
Right.
Or Michael Gerber says that you have to turn your business into a franchise prototype that can be repeated in different geographies. Okay, it sounds fantastic, but how do you actually put that in practice? Vern Harnish talks about the Rockefeller habits and scaling up and scale your business. So Gino has a genius of turning these ideas into practical tools, and actually a limited number of practical tools, which then can be taught to a leadership team in a matter of a couple of days. And then they can start using this, and then they can implement it across the company, and they start running the company in a much more effective way, where the whole company is aligned around the vision of the founder, and the company starts to execute with discipline and accountability, and the leadership team becomes a much more cohesive, strong leadership team where people are confronting each other and solving problems and helping the company grow.
Yeah. And I've got a couple of companies I've worked with, the concept of rocks, which is a big part of that. So talk a little bit about what that is. And it's one of my favorite things. And it may be because in the Who Moved My Cheese, I'm the guy who always wants to get to the cheese, right? So, that's why rocks are great. It's like, it's cheese. I can make it to the cheese. So talk about what the rocks are.
Right. So the rocks, it's another of those ideas that came from one of the business greats. Stephen Covey wrote about the rocks. It was one of his demonstrations when he went into a group of entrepreneurs, and he took with him 2 cylinders. And he said that basically you've got the rocks, the pebbles, and the stone. The rocks, the pebbles, and the sand. And the rocks represent those initiatives that are very important for taking your company to the next level. These are not the business as usual, not the daily operations. It's something to move the company forward, but it's not necessarily super urgent. So if you don't get it done today, nothing happens, but the company is not going to move forward. The pebbles are really the daily things that you have to get done. You have to put out fires. You have to meet deadlines. You have to have your clients. You call back your clients and service your clients and make sure that they are happy. This is something that you have to do. It's not an option. And the third one is the sand, is essentially all the distractions that you're facing in the day. And what happens if you allow things to take their own course, allow entropy to rule in your company, then what's going to happen is the sand is going to come first, and it is going to fill up the space, the available space, and then come the pebbles, which people have to deal with, and then the rocks just after that. So if you have 2 cylinders and you make this experiment that you pour in the sand first, so you allow the distractions. Let's say people come in the morning and they check around the water cooler, they have a cup of coffee, they check the sports score, they do some betting online, whatever they do.
Right.
Then it's going to be on 11 o'clock and they say, oh, gosh, we have to do something because we're going to get fired. So we call back the clients, they put out the fires, and by the time 4:30 comes around, they are exhausted. And they says, oh, okay, we've done our pebbles, so let's do some rocks. Rocks are big projects which are non-routine. So it's going to be really hard for them to get the rock done in half an hour. In fact, they probably procrastinate on them because they will be low on energy. And for rocks, you need a lot of mental energy. So the rocks don't get done. But if you reverse the process, you come in the morning and you do your rocks, you work a couple of hours on your rocks, you put the rocks in the in the jar, then you do your pebbles. Let's say from 10 to 4, you're 10 to 10 to 4, you do your pebbles. And then from 4 to 5, you can still deal with some sand. So when you put this in the jars, when you put the sand in and then the pebbles, the rocks will not fit. But if you put the rocks first, the pebbles will fall between the rocks, and then the sand will fall between the pebbles and the rocks, and everything is going to fit in your day.
Yeah.
So that's really the idea. So with the rocks, what we do in EOS is we prioritize the rocks. So it's, imagine like you go to a restaurant, an you can eat buffet. You take your tray and you see all this sumptuous food, and you put this burger on the tray, and then you put this salad, and you put that dessert, and you keep putting stuff on your tray. You're actually not making a decision.
Right.
You are deferring a decision. You're packing your tray, and then you go back to your table, and you're not able to eat everything.
Yeah, you look at it and you're like, which of this am I actually going to consume? Yeah.
Yeah, so not making a decision. You're only making a decision when you take something off your plate.
Got it.
And actually, the word decision means to cut off. So you have to cut things off. And what we do is, this is what we do. So we put all the potential projects that the leadership team could work in the next 90 days on the table and say, okay, we have 50 projects. We can only get them 3 to 7 realistically. So which are the ones that we are not going to do? And then we keep cutting until we end up with those 3 to 7 projects that we actually have time to do, and they are the most important, and then we commit to doing them.
Yeah. And I love the concept of, not allowing people to take more than they should be able to handle, because there's, in those sessions, a person should get a rock. Like you're not going to get 5 because there's just no way. You can't carry them, right? And even the concept of calling it a rock, it's a really interesting way. So how does a company know that something like, because I've heard people talk about EOS or whatever, and they're like, oh, we're too small for it. Or they may even say they're too big for it, which I don't know that there's such a thing. But how do you know that that may be right for you to start thinking about or considering as a company?
So EOS is great for companies that have people.
Okay.
So if you have a one-person company, you can still do EOS. I do EOS for my own business, my own consulting business. But the ideal client for EOS is a company that has at least 10 employees.
Okay.
And which wants to make more money, and they feel stuck. They feel that they are not growing as fast as they want. They are not developing, not evolving as a business. Then EOS is a great template for them, and it's something that they can implement without a lot of effort and bureaucratic initiative. So all they have to do, they have to pull out their leadership team from the business to work on the business as opposed to in the business for 5 days a year. And then they do an hour and a half a week. And this is how you implement EOS.
Yeah.
So you have these meetings 5 days a year and an hour and a half a week. And this is enough for you to align the team around the vision, to prioritize. And on a weekly basis, what you do is you hold each other accountable. Are people working on their rocks? We have a scorecard. Are people hitting their numbers on their scorecard that they are responsible for? And are they doing their to-dos? And then you identify issues that you can work on. So you spend 30 minutes in the meeting identifying issues. And at the end of 30 minutes, you will have 15 issues typically that you had identified. And then you pick the most important 3 issues and you start working on processing those issues. We call it IDS, identify the root of the issue, discuss it, have a balanced discussion in the team, don't allow anyone to dominate it, and then solve and make a decision so that you can take action to make that issue go away. And if you do that every week, you're going to keep solving your problems and you're moving to higher level problems. and the business is moving forward.
And a couple of interesting things that I've seen work with that is that a lot of us like to discuss the problem. So we never get past discussion to actually solving it.
Right.
And
so discussing the problem is not very productive, right? It's important, but it gets redundant after time, and then someone has to make a decision. And the challenge is that often there's no full consensus.
Yeah.
And the leader, if there's no consensus, they are looking for that consensus. They will defer the issue to next week, and hopefully they will get consensus then. But why should there be more chance next week? And they already wasted a week, and people get frustrated for having these fruitless discussions. So making the decision is important. And sometimes EOS is also good for a leader who is maybe doesn't feel as strong as they should be.
Yeah.
Because it's a great support structure for them. They have an implementer come in and help them hold the team accountable and help them be a much more effective leader.
And it's great that you said that. That's exactly what I've seen. Companies that do EOS, the leader becomes a better leader. Like at the end of the day, they are just a better leader. Like it does something to their psyche, the way that they manage the business, and they just step up. It's a very interesting part of what happens with it. And so your role, you're an implementer. Is that what you do? I
am an EOS implementer, and I also see myself as I implement EOS, and then I am in the company and help the leadership team to be an external accountability partner for.
Got it. Yeah. So it sounds like, I love the space that you're in, because you've got both that, which gives the tools, but you also give them an outlet for talking with other entrepreneurs about what they're trying to do in their business. So you're truly living up to Entrep Coach. You're an entrepreneur's coach, right?
That's the idea.
Well, I appreciate you spending the time today talking with us today.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Eric. I enjoyed the interview, and I hope we'll see you again soon with my Vistage group. So I encourage you to develop a second talk.
Maybe we should do Awkward in Between Years. I should send you that one. So anyway, so we've been talking today with Steve Preda. He is the CEO, owner, whatever you want to call yourself, of Entrep Coach. He both does some work with Vistage and EOS, which are two organizations, groups, things, I guess, if you can't think of a better word, that anyone who's trying to move their business from entrepreneurially run to professionally managed or trying to scale, you should look at both of those. Those are great ways of being successful with your business. You've been listening to Build Your Best Business. And until next week, what are you going to do to build your best business?